The mall was a kaleidoscope of noise and color. A Friday night frenzy in suburban Ohio. But all I could hear was the thud of my own heart. I stood by the fountain, watching the water ripple. My best friend Caleb beside me. His presence both a comfort and a quiet ache. I'd loved him for years. Silently. Fiercely. Knowing he'd never feel the same. We were an unlikely pair. Caleb and I. At 25, I was the artsy one Elliot Harper. Perpetually underdressed in thrift store flannels. With hazel eyes that saw too much and a sketchbook always tucked under my arm. Caleb, also 25, was the all-American guy, blonde, broad-shouldered. A former high school quarterback who now coached Little League and worked construction. He was straight. Always had been. With a string of girlfriends who never lasted. I'd been out since I was 16. And he'd never flinched. Never judged. But that didn't stop the longing that clawed at me every time he laughed too loud or slung an arm around my shoulders. Tonight, we were shopping for a gift for his mom's 50th birthday. The mall was packed. Families weaving through stores. Teenagers laughing over pretzels. Caleb wanted something special. A necklace maybe. And I'd agreed to help because that's what best friends do. But as we walked past the food court, his hand brushed mine. And I froze. It wasn't the first time. But something about it, maybe the way his fingers lingered a second too long, sent a jolt through me. I glanced at him. But he was staring ahead. His jaw tight. Like he was wrestling with something he couldn't name. "You okay, man?" I asked, keeping my voice light, though my pulse was anything but. He nodded. Quick and sharp. "Yeah. Just crowded in here." His blue eyes flicked to mine, then away, and I wondered what he wasn't saying. Caleb was never one for deep talks. He was action, not words, fixing my car when it broke down, showing up with pizza when I was stressed about art school deadlines. But lately, there'd been moments, a glance that held too long, a touch that felt deliberate. Or maybe I was imagining it, projecting my own desperate hope onto him. We ducked into a jewelry store, the kind with glass cases and overeager salespeople. Caleb scanned the necklaces, his brow furrowed. "What do you think she'd like?" he asked, pointing to a silver chain with a heart-shaped pendant. I leaned closer, our shoulders brushing. "It's nice, but your mom's more elegant. Maybe something with a gemstone." I pointed to a delicate necklace with an emerald. Her birthstone. He smiled. And for a moment, it was just us. The world fading away. "Good call," he said, his voice softer than usual. He reached for the necklace, and his hand grazed mine again. This time, he didn't pull away. His fingers curled slightly, pressing against my knuckles, and my breath caught. I looked up, and his eyes were on Minute the jewelry. Not the store. Just me. The air felt thick. Electric. Like we were teetering on the edge of something neither of us could name. The salesperson interrupted, asking if we needed help. And the moment shattered. Caleb stepped back, clearing his throat. And I tried to act normal. Like my heart wasn't screaming. We bought the emerald necklace. And as we left the store, Caleb's hand brushed mine again. This time, I was sure it wasn't an accident. We wandered toward the food court, the crowd swallowing us. Caleb was quieter now, his usual easy grin replaced by something heavier. I wanted to ask what was wrong, to push past the wall he always put up, but I didn't. Instead, I suggested ice cream, hoping to lighten the mood. He agreed, and we sat on a bench by the fountain, cones in hand. The silence between us louder than the mall's chaos. "Elliot," he said finally, his voice low. He wasn't looking at me, just staring at his melting cone. "You ever feel like you're not sure who you are anymore?" I swallowed hard, the ice cream turning to ash in my mouth. "Yeah," I said. "All the time." He nodded, like he'd expected that, and his hand rested on the bench, inches from mine. I could feel the heat of it, the pull, like gravity. I wanted to reach out, to close the gap, but fear stopped me. What if I was wrong? What if I ruined everything? But then his pinky brushed mine, deliberate, and my world tilted. I looked at him, and he was already looking back, his eyes raw, searching. For the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, his heart was as tangled as mine. The fountain spray caught the mall's fluorescent lights, scattering tiny rainbows across Caleb's face. His pinky stayed pressed against mine, a small, seismic touch that made my chest ache. I didn't move, afraid to break whatever fragile thing was happening between us. Caleb shifted, his knee bumping mine. "You're good at this," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the bag with his mom's necklace. "Picking stuff out. You always know what people need." I laughed, nervous, trying to keep things light. "Years of practice, I guess. You're not so bad yourself." I nudged his shoulder, hoping to coax out his usual grin. But he just looked at me, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched, heavy with things unsaid, and I felt the weight of every moment we'd spent together, late-night drives, shared beers on his porch, the way he'd always been there, steady as a heartbeat. We finished our ice cream, the cold barely registering against the heat in my veins. Caleb stood, tossing his napkin into a nearby trash can. "Want a walk?" he asked, and I nodded, grateful for movement, for anything to distract me from the chaos in my head. The mall was a labyrinth of stores and sounds, but it felt like we were in our own bubble. We passed a record shop, and I tugged him inside, knowing his love for old vinyl. He flipped through the stacks, his fingers lingering on a worn copy of Springsteen's Born to Run. "This was my dad's favorite," he said, his voice soft. "He used to play it on Sundays, driving us to church." I watched him, the way his eyes softened, the way his hands held the record like it was something sacred. "You miss him?" I said, not a question. "Yeah," he admitted, setting the record down. "Every day?" His dad had died 3 years ago, a heart attack that came out of nowhere. Caleb had been a wreck, and I'd been there, holding him together when he couldn't do it himself. It was one of the times I'd realized how deep my feelings ran, how much I'd give to see him smile again. We left the shop without buying anything, the moment too heavy to linger. Outside, the mall's energy pulsed around us, kids running, couples arguing, music blaring from a nearby store. Caleb stopped by a railing overlooking the lower level, his hands gripping the metal. "Elliot," he said, his voice rough, "you ever think about what you want? Like, really want?" My heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" He turned to face me, his blue eyes intense. "Like, who you're supposed to be with. What that's supposed to feel like." His words hung in the air, and I couldn't breathe. Was he asking about me? About us? Or was this just Caleb, wrestling with his own confusion, oblivious to the storm he was stirring in me? "I think about it," I said carefully, my voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not always easy to know, or to say." He nodded, like he understood, and his hand moved closer to mine on the railing. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his skin. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he said, his voice low. "About you. About us." My world stopped. I searched his face, looking for a hint of what he meant. But his expression was a mix of fear and something else, something that looked like longing. Before I could respond, a group of teenagers barreled past, laughing loudly, and the moment broke. Caleb stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "Forget it," He muttered, "Let's keep moving." But I couldn't forget it. His words echoed in my head as we walked, the mall's chaos fading to a dull hum. We passed a photo booth, its neon sign flashing, and I grabbed his arm, desperate to hold on to whatever was happening. "Come on," I said, forcing a grin. "Let's do something stupid." He hesitated, then followed me into the cramped booth. We squeezed in, our knees touching, and I fed quarters into the machine. The camera flashed, capturing us mid-laugh, then serious, then making dumb faces. In the last shot, Caleb's hand rested on my thigh, and I didn't pull away. When the strip printed, I saw it, his fingers curled around mine in the final frame. A quiet confession caught on film. We stepped out, and he handed me the strip, his eyes avoiding mine. "Keep it," he said, his voice tight. "You're better at holding on to things." I tucked the photos into my pocket, my heart pounding. The mall closed soon, and we headed to the parking lot, the night air cool against my flushed skin. In his truck, Caleb was quiet, his hands gripping the wheel. I wanted to ask what he meant, to demand answers, but I didn't. Instead, I let the silence speak, hoping his hands would tell me more. The truck's engine hummed, a low rumble that filled the silence between us as Caleb drove through the quiet Ohio streets. The photo strip burned a hole in my pocket, his hand on mine frozen in time. I stole glances at him, his profile sharp against the glow of passing streetlights, and wondered what was going on in his head. "You hungry?" he asked suddenly, breaking the tension. "There's that diner we used to go to." I nodded, grateful for the distraction. The diner was a relic, all chrome and neon, with waitresses who called you Han and coffee that tasted like burnt dreams. We slid into a booth, the vinyl squeaking under us, and ordered burgers and fries, just like old times. But it wasn't old times. Not with the way his knee kept brushing mine under the table. Not with the way his eyes lingered when he thought I wasn't looking. "So," I said, poking at my fries, "what's with you tonight? You're different." He froze, his burger halfway to his mouth. "Different how?" I shrugged, trying to keep it casual. "I don't know. Quiet. Like you're carrying something heavy." He set his burger down, his jaw tight. "Maybe I am," he said, his voice low. "Maybe I've been carrying it for a while." My pulse quickened. "You want to talk about it?" He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something raw in his eyes, fear. "Maybe. Or need. It's not easy," he said, "talking about stuff like this. You make it look easy, Elliot. Being you." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Easy? You think being out is easy? You think loving someone who doesn't?" I stopped, my words catching in my throat. I'd almost said too much. Caleb's eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought he'd push, but he didn't. Instead, he reached across the table, his hand brushing mine, just like in the mall. "I'm not good at this," he said. "Words. Feelings. But you make me want to try." My heart stopped. I wanted to grab his hand, to demand he explain. But the waitress came by with the check, and the moment slipped away. We paid and left, the night air sharp against my skin. In the truck, Caleb turned on the radio, some country song about lost love, and I stared out the window, trying to piece together what was happening. He pulled into my apartment complex, the engine idling. "Elliot," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can I come up?" I froze. Caleb had been to my place 100 times, but this felt different, like crossing a line we couldn't uncross. "Sure," I said, my voice shaking. "Yeah, come on." My apartment was small, cluttered with art supplies and half-finished canvases. Caleb sat on the couch, his hands clasped between his knees, looking out of place in my chaotic world. I grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, handing him one, and sat beside him, close enough to feel the heat of his body. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" I asked, my voice softer now. He took a long sip, his eyes fixed on the bottle. "I don't know how to say it," he admitted. "I've been feeling things I didn't expect. About you." My breath caught. I set my beer down, my hands trembling. "Caleb, what are you saying?" He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "I'm saying, I don't know what I am anymore. But when I'm with you, it feels right. And that scares the hell out of me." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. All I could do was stare at him, at the boy I'd loved for years, who was finally saying the words I dreamed of. But there was fear in his eyes, and I knew this wasn't simple. Not for him. Not for someone who'd spent his life fitting into a mold that didn't allow for this. His hand reached for mine, tentative, and I let him take it. His fingers were warm, calloused from work, and they fit against mine like they belonged there. "I don't know what this means," he said, "but I don't want to lose you." "You won't," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You never could." We sat there, hands entwined, the world outside fading away. For the first time, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, his heart was catching up to mine. The silence in my apartment was thick, charged with the weight of Caleb's words. His hand stayed in mine, his thumb brushing my knuckles, each touch a quiet earthquake. I wanted to pull him closer, to erase the space between us. But I could see the storm in his eyes: confusion, fear, and something that looked like love. "Caleb," I said, my voice barely steady, "you don't have to figure this out tonight. Whatever this is, we can take it slow." He nodded, but his grip tightened, like he was afraid I'd slip away. "I've been thinking about this for months," he admitted. "Every time we're together, it's like I see you differently, and it's messing with my head." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. "Different how?" He laughed, a short, nervous sound. "Like I want to be closer to you. Like I don't want you to leave." He looked down at our hands, his voice dropping. "Like maybe I've been lying to myself about who I am." My chest ached, not just for me, but for him, for the battle he was fighting inside. Growing up in our small Ohio town, being anything other than straight wasn't easy. Caleb had always been the golden boy, the one everyone expected to marry a nice girl, have kids, live the American dream. But here he was, holding my hand, tearing that dream apart. I shifted closer, our knees touching. "You don't have to be anyone you're not," I said. "But if this is real, if you feel something, I'm here." His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. But then he pulled back, running a hand through his hair. "I need time, Elliot. It's a lot." I nodded, hiding the sting of disappointment. "Take all the time you need." He stayed for another hour, the conversation shifting to safer groundwork. His mom's party, the Reds game next weekend. But the air was different now, charged with possibility. When he left, he hugged me, his arms lingering longer than usual, and I felt his heartbeat against my chest. The next few days were a blur. Caleb texted, but his messages were short, careful, like he was testing the waters. I threw myself into my art, sketching his face from memory, his sharp jaw, his uncertain smile. On Wednesday, he called, his voice bright but nervous. "You free tomorrow? Mom's party is at the house. I could use you there." I agreed, and the next evening, I pulled up to his mom's place. A cozy ranch house with a sprawling backyard. The party was in full swing. String lights twinkling. Neighbors chatting over barbecue. Caleb greeted me at the door. His smile wide, but his eyes guarded. He looked good too, good in a fitted blue shirt. His hair still damp from a shower. "You clean up nice," I teased, trying to ease the tension. He grinned, nudging my shoulder. "You too, artist boy." But his hand lingered on my arm, and I felt that familiar jolt. The party was warm, chaotic, everything a family gathering should be. Caleb's mom, Linda, hugged me like I was her own, gushing over the necklace we'd picked. "You boys always know how to make me feel special," she said, her eyes twinkling. As the night wore on, Caleb and I ended up by the fire pit, beers in hand, the crowd thinning. The air was cool, the stars sharp above us. He was quieter than usual, his shoulder brushing mine as we sat on a wooden bench. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Means a lot." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, my voice soft. I wanted to say more, to ask where we stood, but the word stuck. His hand moved to the bench, close to mine, and I felt the pull again, that magnetic force that had been building for weeks. "Elliot," he said, his voice low. "I've been thinking about what I said. About us." My heart stopped. And he looked at me, his eyes raw. "I'm scared, but I don't want to keep running from this." Before I could respond, his sister called him over to help with cleanup, and he stood, leaving me breathless. The fire crackled, and I stared into the flames, wondering if this was the start of something or the edge of heartbreak. The fire pit's glow cast shadows across the backyard, and I sat frozen, Caleb's words echoing in my head. He didn't want to run anymore. But what did that mean? I sipped my beer, the bitter taste grounding me as I watched him stack chairs with his sister, his laughter carrying over the chatter of the dwindling crowd. When he came back, his expression was softer, less guarded. He sat closer this time, our thighs brushing, and I felt the heat of him through my jeans. "Sorry about that," he said. "Family stuff." "No worries," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "You okay?" He nodded, but his eyes told a different story, nervous, searching. "I meant what I said earlier," he murmured, "about not running. I don't know how to do this." My heart pounded. "Do what?" "Caleb." He looked down, his hands fidgeting. "This. Us. Whatever's happening." He paused, then met my eyes. "I've never felt like this about a guy. Hell, I've never felt like this about anyone." I couldn't breathe. I'd spent years burying my feelings, convincing myself they'd never be returned. And now, here he was, cracking open the door I'd thought was locked forever. "Caleb," I said, my voice shaking, "you don't have to have all the answers. Just be honest with me." He nodded, his hand inching closer until his fingers brushed mine. "I want to try," he said. "With you, if you'll let me." The world tilted. I wanted to laugh, to cry, to pull him into my arms. Instead, I squeezed his hand, feeling the roughness of his skin, the reality of him. "I've been waiting for you to say that," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. His smile was small, tentative, but it lit up the night. We sat there, hands clasped, the fire warming our faces, until his mom called everyone inside for cake. The moment broke, but it didn't vanish, it lingered. A promise. The next week was a whirlwind. Caleb and I saw each other every day, testing this new, fragile thing between us. We didn't label it, didn't push, but every touch, his hand on my back, my arm brushing his, felt like a step towards something real. We went to a Reds game, cheering in the stands. And when he slung an arm around my shoulders, it wasn't just friendly anymore. It was more. But not everyone noticed the shift. At a bar with mutual friends, one of Caleb's old teammates, Mike, made a crude joke about guys like me. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything, and I felt a pang of doubt. Was he ready for this? For the world to see us differently? Later, in his truck, I brought it up. You didn't say anything back there, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. When Mike was being a jerk. Caleb sighed, gripping the wheel. I know. I froze. It's new. Okay. I'm not used to this. I nodded, but the hurt lingered. I get it. But if we're doing this, you can't just freeze. People are going to talk. Caleb. They always do. He looked at me, his eyes fierce. I'm not ashamed of you, Elliot. I just need time to figure out how to handle it. I wanted to believe him, but fear gnawed at me. I'd been out for years, faced the slurs, the judgment. Caleb was new to this, and I didn't know if he could handle the weight of it. The next day, he showed up at my apartment with coffee and a sheepish grin. I messed up last night, he said. I should have said something. I will next time. I looked at him, searching for truth, and found it in his eyes. Okay, I said, letting him pull me into a hug. His arms were strong, certain, and for the first time, I felt like maybe we could do this. But the world wasn't done testing us. At a construction site, Caleb's co-workers started whispering, their eyes lingering when I dropped him off. He brushed it off, but I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided their gazes, and I wondered how long it would take for the cracks to show. The construction site was a maze of steel beams and dust, the air thick with the smell of concrete. I'd stopped by to bring Caleb lunch, a small gesture that felt bigger now, with his co-workers' eyes on us. He thanked me, his smile tight, and I drove away, the weight of their stares heavy in my chest. That night, Caleb came over, his mood darker than usual. He paced my living room, his hands shoved in his pockets. They're talking, he said finally. At work. About us. I sat on the couch, my sketchbook forgotten in my lap. What are they saying? He shrugged, but his eyes were stormy. Stupid stuff. Jokes. Calling me names. He stopped pacing, looking at me. I told them to shut up. But it's not easy. Elliot. I nodded, my throat tight. I know. It never is. He sat beside me, his knee brushing mine. I don't care what they think, he said, but his voice wavered. I didn't expect it to feel like this. Like I'm losing something. My heart sank. Losing what? He looked away, his jaw tight. Who I was. The guy everyone liked. The one who fit in. I reached for his hand, needing to ground him. To ground us. You're still you, Caleb. You're just more now. He squeezed my hand, his eyes searching mine. You make it sound simple. It's not, I admitted. But it's worth it. You're worth it. He leaned closer, and for the first time, he kissed me. It was tentative, soft, his lips warm against mine. My world exploded, every moment of longing pouring into that kiss. When we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, his breath uneven. I'm trying. Elliot, he whispered. I'm really trying. I know, I said, my voice breaking. And I'm here. The next few weeks were a tightrope. Caleb was more open holding my hand in public, introducing me as his boyfriend to his sister, who hugged us both with tears in her eyes. But the whispers followed us. At a local bar, a group of guys from his old team stared, their laughter sharp. Caleb's hand tightened around mine, but he didn't let go. "Ignore them," he muttered, and I saw the steel in his eyes. The fight he was starting to win. But not every battle was easy. His mom invited us to dinner, and while she was kind, I saw the questions in her eyes, the worry she didn't voice. Caleb was quieter that night, and later, in his truck, he admitted she'd asked if he was sure about this. "She doesn't get it," he said, "but she's trying." I nodded, my heart aching for him. "For us. It takes time," I said. "For everyone." He looked at me, his eyes soft. "You're worth it. You know. All of this." My chest tightened, and I kissed him, harder this time, needing him to feel what I couldn't say. The world was loud, judgmental, but in that moment, it was just us, and it was enough. But the cracks kept showing. At work, Caleb's boss pulled him aside, warning him about distractions. Caleb brushed it off, but I saw the strain, the way he started checking his phone less, avoiding certain friends. I wanted to fix it, to shield him, but I couldn't. All I could do was be there, steady, as he navigated this new version of himself. One night, he showed up at my apartment, his eyes red. "I got into it with Mike," he said, his voice rough. "He called you, something I won't repeat. I lost it. Elliot. I hit him." I froze, my heart racing. "Caleb, what happened?" "He's fine," he said quickly. "Just a bloody nose. But I'm on thin ice at work now." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I didn't mean to make things worse. I couldn't let him talk about you like that." I pulled him into my arms, feeling his body tremble. "You don't have to fight for me," I said. "Just be with me." He held me tighter, his breath warm against my neck. "I'm trying," he whispered. "God, I'm trying." The weeks that followed were a storm of highs and lows. Caleb and I were closer than ever, our evenings filled with quiet moments cooking dinner in my cramped kitchen, watching old movies, stealing kisses when no one was looking. But the outside world pressed in, relentless. His coworkers' whispers turned to cold shoulders, and he stopped going to the bar with his old team. I saw the toll it took, the way his smile didn't always reach his eyes. One night, we walked through a park near my apartment, the air crisp with early fall. The leaves crunched under our feet, and Caleb's hand was warm in mine. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked suddenly. "This town. I mean, starting over somewhere else." I looked at him, surprised. "Sometimes. But this is home. You, me, your family, it's all here." He nodded, but his eyes were distant. "I just wonder if it'd be easier. Somewhere no one knows us." My stomach twisted. "Is that what you want? To hide?" He stopped walking, turning to face me. "No. I want you. But it's harder than I thought. People look at me like I'm someone else now." I squeezed his hand, my heart aching. "They'll get used to it. Or they won't. But you don't have to prove anything to them." He pulled me close, his lips brushing my forehead. "You make it sound so easy," he murmured. "How do you do it?" "I don't," I admitted. "I just keep going. For you. It's worth it." He kissed me then, under the glow of a street lamp. And for a moment, the world was quiet. But the peace didn't last. The next day, Caleb's boss called him into the office. When he came over that night, his face was pale, his hands shaking. "They're letting me go," he said. "Not outright, but they're cutting my hours." said it's budget issues. But I know better. I felt sick. Because of us. He didn't answer, but his silence was enough. I pulled him into my arms. Anger and guilt warring inside me. I'm sorry, I whispered. This is my fault. No, he said fiercely, pulling back to look at me. This is on them. Not you. Never you. We sat on my couch, his head on my shoulder, and I felt the weight of what we were up against. But I also felt his strength, the way he held on to me, refusing to let go. We'll figure it out, he said. Together. The next morning, Caleb woke up determined. He started looking for new jobs, ones where he could be himself without fear. I helped him update his resume, our hands brushing over my laptop. And I saw a spark of the old Caleb, the one who didn't back down. He applied to a construction firm in Columbus, a bigger city, more open, and I dared to hope it could be a fresh start. But hope is fragile. At a family barbecue, Caleb's uncle made a snide comment about his new lifestyle, and I saw Caleb's fists clench. He didn't swing, but his voice was ice as he told his uncle to back off. Later, in my apartment, he was quiet. The fight drained out of him. I'm tired, Elliot, he said, tired of defending us. I took his hand, my heart breaking. Then let me carry it for a while. I said, we're in this together. He looked at me, his eyes soft, and kissed me, slow and deep. It wasn't a fix, but it was enough to keep us going. The next day, he got a call from the Columbus firm, a job offer. His face lit up, and for the first time in weeks, I saw real hope in his eyes. We could move, he said, his voice excited. You and me. A new city. A new start. I laughed, caught off guard. You're serious? Dead serious, he said, pulling me close. I want a life with you, Elliot, wherever that takes us. My heart soared, but fear lingered. A new city meant leaving everything behind me: art school, his family, our history. But as I looked at him, his eyes bright with possibility, I knew I'd follow him anywhere. Columbus was a gamble, but it was ours. We moved in the spring. A small apartment with creaky floors and a view of the city skyline. Caleb started his new job, and I enrolled in an art program, my sketches filling with images of him, his laugh, his hands, the way he looked at me like I was his world. The city was kinder, more open, but it wasn't perfect. We still got stares sometimes, whispers in bars, but Caleb didn't freeze anymore. He held my hand tighter, his chin high, and I fell for him all over again. We built a life: lazy Sundays at farmers markets, late nights painting while he watched, his head on my shoulder. One evening, we walked along the Scioto River, the water reflecting the city lights. Caleb stopped, pulling me close. I was scared, he said, his voice steady. Back in that mall, when I first realized what I felt, I thought I'd lose everything. And now? I asked, my heart pounding. He smiled, his eyes bright. Now I know I gained everything. You're my home, Elliot. I kissed him, the world falling away, and I knew we'd made it through the storm. Not because it was easy, but because we chose each other. Every day, against the odds. His hands, once hesitant, now held mine with certainty, telling me everything his words never could. Years later, I'd look back on that mall trip, on the photo strip still tucked in my wallet, and marvel at how a single touch changed everything. We weren't perfect, and the world wasn't either. But we were enough. Together, we were enough.